On this channel, we've covered movies that cost millions and flopped hard, but only one holds the Guinness World Record for the biggest box office failure in Hollywood history. Today we'll see how one actor's whims led to a chaotic shoot, a scandal-hungry press, and a budget so inflated it turned a traditional blockbuster into the most expensive and disastrous film in Hollywood history. Take a deep breath. We're diving into the wild, behind-the-scenes story of Waterworld, a movie that cost nearly $200 million, and barely anyone watched. You can't talk about Waterworld without talking about Kevin Costner. In the late 80s and early 90s, he starred in a string of box office hits and award-winning films that became instant classics. He wasn't just a charming leading man, he also directed Dances with Wolves, which won the Oscar for Best Picture and Best Director. Off-screen, he seemed to have it all. A long marriage to his college sweetheart, Cindy Silva, and 3 kids. Costner had it all, but he still wanted more. He wanted to be an action hero, and was looking for the perfect project to make it happen. That's when he found a script set in a world covered by water. Long before Costner entered the picture, Waterworld started in the mind of Peter Rader. In the mid-80s, he was just one of many film school grads trying to break into the industry. That's when he landed a meeting with Brad Krevoy, a producer working for Roger Corman, the king of low-budget cinema. Without skipping a beat, Krevoy offered him a job: write and direct a low-cost version of Mad Max. The franchise had already led to plenty of cheap copies, light on budget, heavy on action, and easy to sell. Rader never set out to make another post-apocalyptic copycat, but he didn't want to turn down the opportunity either. Still, he was tired of cars and desert fight scenes. Out of ideas, he went for a walk around the Los Angeles marina. He looked at the water, the boats, and then it hit him. He rushed back to Krevoy's office and pitched it: Mad Max on water. He even had a title: Waterworld. Krevoy was horrified. That's going to cost a fortune. We're talking $5 million. That might sound small now, but in the 80s, it was huge for a low-budget movie. And as you'll see in this video, the numbers are only going to get more insane from here. Rader was ultimately pushed out of the project, but he went ahead and wrote Waterworld on his own. He imagined a future where the planet was completely underwater after the polar ice caps melted. The story followed a man named Noah, who sailed across endless seas, helping people survive on improvised floating islands. His main enemy was Neptune, a villain with a trident who ruled from a throne shaped like a giant shell. The script was full of bizarre touches, including a white horse the hero kept hidden on his boat. Even though he liked writing Waterworld, Rader knew he couldn't really sell it, so he set it aside. He went on to direct 2 low-budget films, but wasn't satisfied. He wanted to make better movies, or at the very least, have more money to work with. So he brought his aquatic adventure back to life and started pitching it around Hollywood. And this time, someone took the bait. In 1988, the Waterworld script caught the attention of producers Andy Licht and Jeff Mueller, who saw it as a spaghetti western on water. After the success of their comedy License to Drive, they were ready for something more ambitious. They planned a $30 million budget, which was pretty standard for Hollywood back then, and intended to shoot in a giant water tank in Malta, already used in other productions. For the director, they chose Niels Gaup, who had recently impressed critics with the Norwegian film Pathfinder. By early 1992, Waterworld was moving forward without issues, until the first of many problems came up. Licht and Mueller were doing everything they could to keep the budget under control. Rader was asked to write new drafts, but always keeping the original spirit of the story. Still, the producers turned to a familiar collaborator, John Davis. He loved the concept and believed it could be made on an even bigger scale. So he called in Lawrence Gordon, a producer with solid experience in big productions. Gordon saw the potential too, and decided to support the project. By then, Waterworld had Hollywood's full attention, especially Kevin Costner's. Costner heard about the project through Gordon, who had worked with him on Field of Dreams. It was exactly what he was looking for, a big blockbuster that could make him an action hero. He didn't just agree to play Noah, he signed on as a producer too. Costner's arrival changed Waterworld for good. As a star, he could draw a big audience, but he also pushed the budget way up. He was set to earn $14 million, plus 15% of any future profits. Gordon had a way forward. He already had a deal with Universal Pictures. What started as a modest film was quickly turning into something far bigger than anyone expected, and the fallout came fast. Licht and Mueller tried to work with Costner and Universal, but their input was ignored. One night, a studio executive called and told them to step away from the project. If they didn't, he warned, the studio would never work with them again. Forced to resign, Licht and Mueller took legal action, and at least secured credit as executive producers. The departure of Licht and Mueller also led to the exit of the original director Niels Gaup. Costner didn't waste any time. He brought in a new director, Kevin Reynolds. They had first worked together on Fandango, reunited for Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and later Costner produced Reynolds' film, Rapa Nui. Reynolds was drawn to the idea of a world covered in water, partly because he had a strong interest in environmental issues. But Costner had a different vision from Reynolds, and it didn't take long before he started imposing it. During the staff changes, Costner gave the Waterworld script another read. He still thought the premise was great, but the tone, the characters, and most of the scenes didn't convince him. Rader, the original writer, offered to take a stab at an 8th draft, but Costner told him there was nothing more he could add. The project needed fresh ideas and new voices. And just like that, Rader, devastated, was out of the very project he had created years earlier. From then on, Waterworld worked with several writers. The one who finally won over Costner and the producers was David Twohy. His job was to strip out the surreal touches and give the story a more conventional tone that could reach a wider audience. He also revised the characters. The main character was now simply called the Mariner, and the White Horse was gone. The villain was renamed Deacon, and the Trident didn't make the cut. With the new drafts ready, the production brought in the crew and completed the casting. The next step was deciding where to film a story set entirely on water. Around that time, Reynolds reconnected with Steven Spielberg, who had helped finance Fandango. He asked what it had been like to direct Jaws, and the legendary filmmaker offered a single piece of advice: don't shoot on open water. He had learned the hard way that the ocean is a wild, uncontrollable force. Instead, Spielberg recommended filming in a tank, just like Licht and Muller had originally planned. And let's face it, if you're directing a movie and Spielberg gives you advice, the smart move is to follow it. Reynolds wanted to, but Costner said no. He was determined to turn Waterworld into an epic, realistic experience, and to do that, he insisted on shooting in the ocean. Together with Davis and Gordon, he picked locations in Hawaii, where the vast Pacific offered the perfect setting for the film. That decision bumped the budget to $65 million, a high number, but still reasonable for a Hollywood blockbuster. But once production began, the problems and the costs kept climbing. Waterworld began filming in June 1994. The schedule called for 96 days of shooting, not including any delays, and on this set, delays were the norm. To build the floating cities known as atolls, the production hired 300 welders and carpenters to work along the Hawaiian coast. The construction used up all the steel on the island, and when that ran out, they had to bring in more from the mainland. To transport the shipment, they hired 2 cargo ships and a Boeing 747, but the airport runway in Hawaii was too short for a plane that size, so Universal had to pay to have it extended. Costner was thrilled with the sets, but soon realized Spielberg had been right. Filming on open water was a nightmare. The waves kept the boats drifting apart, making it hard to keep the camera angles steady. Some cast and crew members had minor accidents due to the constant motion, though no one was seriously hurt. And then came Hawaii's unpredictable weather. Some days were hit by torrential rain, others brought winds reaching 70 kilometers per hour. The sets took a beating and needed constant repairs. But the worst came with 2 hurricanes. Rebuilding the atolls cost millions more and set the production back by weeks. And even when filming could finally begin, the logistical issues were non-stop. Each morning, the floating sets had to be towed about 500 meters off the Hawaiian coast, far enough to keep the island out of the shot. The cast, stunt doubles, and crew were transported to the sets using 55 different vessels: catamarans, 45-meter boats, and jet skis. Sometimes they also had to ferry as many as 500 extras. These trips could take hours, round trip. Actors had to wait on the boats before shooting, often dealing with seasickness and vomiting. And once they got to set, there were no bathrooms. Anyone needing a break or something to eat had to be taken by boat to another ship. With so many problems piling up, there were days when they barely managed to film a single scene, or just a few shots. The schedule started slipping, and the budget soared to $100 million, making Waterworld one of the most expensive movies ever made. The Waterworld shoot had turned into total chaos, but Costner remained focused on the creative side. Still unhappy with the script, he decided to bring in a script doctor, someone who could come in and fix the writing. The person he hired was Joss Whedon. Costner asked him to rewrite the entire 3rd act, but Whedon told him the problems ran through the whole script. He figured he'd either get fired or wrap things up in a week. Instead, as he later described it, he spent 7 weeks in hell. His job was to take notes on Costner's outrageous ideas and turn them into scenes, only to watch that material get completely ruined during filming. At this point, you might be wondering, where was Reynolds, the director of Waterworld? He wanted to make a film that reflected his environmental values, exploring what survival would look like in a world like this. But he was constantly overruled by Costner and his obsession with spectacle. Even so, Reynolds kept trying to do his job the best he could. Still, Costner was the diva of Waterworld, and he didn't bother to hide it. Universal put him up in a suite at the Mauna Lani Bay Hotel, complete with a private pool and a personal butler. If he felt like going out on the water, they provided a yacht that cost $1,800 a day. And he had his own private chef, who kept him stocked with endless trays of shrimp. Costner's behavior had created tension among the cast and crew, and he realized it while filming a scene where he had to be tied to a mast, 12 meters high, staring out at the ocean. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind rocked the boat. Costner yelled for someone to get him down, but no one moved. It was too dangerous, and in many cases, people simply didn't want to help. He was left hanging there for half an hour. When the wind finally settled and a few crew members brought him down, he said, "I almost died today." But Costner's problems weren't limited to the production. While he was in Hawaii, far from his wife Cindy and their children, he met Michelle Amaral, a dancer who also had a family of her own. They began seeing each other in secret, until they were caught by a Waterworld crew member whose identity was never revealed, though by then pretty much everyone was a suspect. That person informed Cindy, who called Costner and asked for a divorce. The problems surrounding Waterworld and Costner were obvious, and it didn't take long for them to leak to the press. The media had a field day with the juiciest details and took aim at the star's inflated ego. He had once been celebrated, but now they jumped at the chance to tear him down, even bringing up past affairs. Most of all, they predicted the film would be a colossal disaster. Could anything else possibly go wrong on Waterworld? Yes. The budget had climbed to $120 million, making it the most expensive movie ever made at the time. In September 1994, Costner saw the top Universal executives arrive on set, but this time, they weren't there to indulge another one of his whims. They were concerned about the headlines. They asked him to cut the script and reduce the number of shooting days. Costner refused. To show he was committed, he gave up his 15% share of the profits, though he kept his full salary. He also advised everyone to ignore the press. After 7 months and 157 shooting days, Waterworld finally wrapped. The chaos at sea was over, but a whole new set of problems was just around the corner. In early 1995, Waterworld entered post-production. Reynolds finally felt at peace. No more floating sets, no more tension, and most importantly, no more Costner. He cut entire sequences to shape the movie into the film he had always envisioned. He also brought in composer Mark Isham, whose score featured strong ethnic influences. But Costner hated Reynolds' first cut. He wanted to know why expensive scenes had been scrapped and ordered him to put them back in. Reynolds, tired of taking orders from the star, finally said no. Furious, Costner had him removed from the project. Costner took over and personally supervised the new cut. With only 3 months to go before the premiere, he was working against the clock. He restored the deleted scenes and fired Isham, saying the music felt too dark. He then brought in James Newton Howard to take over the score. Costner had edited Waterworld the way he wanted, but the producers and Universal executives were falling apart from the stress. The budget had climbed to $175 million. And that wasn't all. A massive marketing campaign was already underway, featuring video games, merchandise, and a novelization. That brought the final cost to $235 million. At that point, the film wasn't just expected to succeed, it needed to become a full-blown box office event to avoid a financial disaster. Costner, the producers, and Universal still held out hope for Waterworld, even as the outlook looked grim. Every day, new reports emerged detailing its chaotic production, and the media had already written it off as a sure failure. The first screening was for critics only. A few studio executives were in attendance, and they panicked when one critic stood up, visibly annoyed as soon as the credits finished rolling. They went over to ask what he had thought, expecting a scathing reaction, but instead he simply said it wasn't bad. That moment confirmed one of Costner's theories. The press had been expecting a total disaster, and instead, they had found a film that was, at the very least, entertaining and well-made. Now it remained to be seen whether Waterworld would connect with audiences. It was released on July 28, 1995, and during its opening weekend, it topped the box office. But word of mouth quickly turned negative, and the film eventually sank. In the end, it made $264 million worldwide. Better than expected, but still not enough to cover its massive budget. The press, clearly enjoying it, called it the biggest failure in movie history. After a chaotic production, Waterworld looked like it had ended in the worst way possible. But was that really the end for the movie and for everyone involved? Waterworld's performance took a toll on Costner's career. He seemed to be making a comeback as both star and director of another post-apocalyptic story, The Postman. This time, there were no production issues, but the movie still flopped. That string of disappointments followed him for years, but he never lost the respect of those in the industry or the support of his fans. And to his credit, he never showed signs of diva behavior again. Despite everything, Costner has always said that Waterworld didn't harm his career, and that he's proud to have made it. The rest of Waterworld's key players also moved forward with their careers. Reynolds went on to direct more films, and eventually made peace with Costner. Davis and Gordon continued producing films, most of which were successful. And what about Peter Rader, the one who started it all? He never worked on another blockbuster, but he remained active in Hollywood, fulfilling his goal of making it in the industry. As for Waterworld, it was eventually re-evaluated by both audiences and critics, and went on to earn the affection of a new generation of fans. It also gained renewed popularity through the Universal Studios attraction it had inspired. And thanks to home video sales and broadcast rights, the film ultimately ended up turning a profit. Waterworld had begun as a modest, low-budget project, and had grown into a multi-million-dollar monster. Its greatest driving force had ultimately become its most relentless executioner, even if unintentionally. It had exposed some of Hollywood's worst impulses, and while there was a hint of redemption in the end, it still stands as a reminder. Even the most spotless careers can go under, just like the entire world might in a not-so-distant future. Some movies flop so hard they take down the careers of everyone involved, but this one bombed so badly it sank an entire subgenre.